I thought my 70th birthday would be a celebration of family love and 7 decades of memories. Instead, it became the night I discovered my own children wanted me dead. There I sat at Romano's Italian restaurant, surrounded by the people I loved most in this world, reaching for the glass of Chianti I had specially ordered to toast another year of life. That's when Angela, the young waitress with worried eyes, slipped me a crumpled note that made my blood freeze. "Don't drink that." My heart hammered against my ribs as I glanced around the table at my family's smiling faces. Without thinking, I switched my glass with my daughter-in-law Brenda's when she turned to grab her purse. 10 minutes later, Brenda was convulsing on the restaurant floor, foam spilling from her lips, while paramedics shouted about antifreeze poisoning. As I watched my son Craig sob over his dying wife, one terrifying thought echoed in my mind: someone at this table had just tried to murder me. My name is Dottie Peterson, and until that horrible night, I believed I was living the American dream in retirement. After 42 years as a head librarian in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, I had earned a comfortable life in my 3-bedroom ranch house on Maple Street. Frank, my beloved husband, had passed 5 years earlier from cancer, leaving me with substantial savings, a paid-off house, and enough in my retirement accounts to live independently for decades. I prided myself on being sharp, organized, and nobody's fool. Romano's had been my choice for the birthday dinner because Frank proposed to me there 42 years ago, right at table 12, where we sat tonight. The red brick walls still held the same vintage wine bottles, and the checkered tablecloths brought back memories of younger days when our biggest worry was saving enough money for a down payment on our first house. My family had gathered to celebrate Craig, my 45-year-old son, who worked in construction management, his wife Brenda, 38, who taught elementary school, my daughter Susan, 42, who ran a small marketing business, her husband Marcus, 44, an accountant, and my pride and joy, 16-year-old granddaughter Ashley, a junior at Phoenix Prep with dreams of studying journalism at Arizona State. The ambulance ride to St. Joseph's Hospital passed in a blur of sirens and Craig's frantic questions. He kept asking the paramedics about timing, about how long antifreeze took to work, about whether there were antidotes. His questions seemed oddly specific for a distraught husband, but I was too shocked to process that observation fully. At the hospital, Dr. Martinez explained that ethylene glycol poisoning attacks the kidneys and nervous system, causing seizures and organ failure. Brenda remained unconscious in intensive care, while police officers took statements from our family. Detective Rodriguez asked routine questions about who had access to Brenda's drink, whether she had enemies, if there were any disputes in the family. That's when Angela found me in the waiting room. The 20-something waitress with dark curls and nervous energy approached hesitantly, glancing around to make sure we weren't overheard. "Mrs. Peterson, I need to tell you something," she whispered. "I saw someone mess with that wine bottle during the dinner rush. There was chaos in the kitchen because we had 3 large parties at once, and I went to get extra breadsticks from the service station. That's when I saw a family member near the wine display doing something to one of the bottles." My stomach dropped. "Which family member?" Angela pulled out her phone, fingers shaking as she opened a video. "I recorded this on the security app we use to monitor the dining room. Look at the timestamp. 7:43 p.m., right when your appetizers were being served." The grainy footage showed the service area behind our table. I watched in horror as Craig moved deliberately toward the wine station, pulling something small from his pocket. He glanced around, then tilted a bottle and added liquid from what looked like a tiny vial. The whole process took less than 30 seconds. My son had tried to poison me. My own child, whom I'd raised, loved, and supported through every challenge in his life, had attempted murder for my money. Angela's voice seemed to come from underwater. I wasn't sure what I was seeing at first, but something felt wrong. That's why I wrote the note. "I'm so sorry I didn't speak up sooner." I managed to thank her through my shock, asking her to save that footage and not tell anyone else what she'd seen. I needed time to think, to understand, to figure out what to do next. Back home that night, alone in my quiet house, I sat in Frank's old recliner and tried to process the impossible. Craig had always been my responsible child, the one who helped with home repairs, who called every Sunday, who seemed to genuinely care about my well-being. Susan was the dramatic one, always in some financial crisis, always needing loans that became gifts because she never paid them back. But now I had to face the truth: my son was willing to kill me. The question was why and whether he was acting alone. Sleep eluded me that night as questions tormented my mind. I'd raised Craig to be honest and hardworking, but somewhere along the way, something had gone terribly wrong. By dawn, I'd made a decision. If my son was capable of attempted murder, I needed to discover what else he'd been hiding. I started in my home office checking financial statements I'd been too trusting to examine closely. My monthly bank statements showed odd patterns. Several checks I didn't remember writing had been cashed over the past 6 months. The signatures looked like mine, but something about them seemed off. A withdrawal of $5,000 in March, another for $7,500 in June, $8,000 in September. My hands trembled as I called First National Bank. The customer service representative, Janet, had known me for years. "Oh, Mrs. Peterson, yes, your son has been handling those transactions for you. He said you were having trouble getting to the bank because of your health concerns." Health concerns? I was in better shape than most people half my age. What exactly did Craig tell you? He mentioned you'd been forgetting things, having some confusion with your accounts. He brought in a power of attorney document so he could help manage your finances. I'd never signed any power of attorney. After Janet agreed to fax copies of all documents Craig had submitted, I discovered forged signatures on multiple forms. He'd been systematically draining my accounts for months. Next, I checked my garage where Craig often stored tools and equipment. Hidden behind paint cans, I found his laptop computer in a cardboard box labeled tax documents. My heart pounded as I opened it, praying it wasn't password protected. Luck was with me. Craig had left it logged in. The browser history revealed hours of research on ethylene glycol, antifreeze poisoning symptoms, and lethal dosages. Forum posts under the username Desperate Inezes asked detailed questions about making poisoning look accidental. My blood ran cold as I read his calculations about my body weight and the amount needed to ensure death within 30 minutes. Email chains between Craig and someone named Tony Marcetti painted a horrifying picture. Craig owed $300,000 to underground gambling operations in Las Vegas. The messages grew increasingly threatening over recent months, with references to breaking legs and permanent solutions if payment wasn't received by December 1st. But the most devastating discovery came in emails between Craig and Susan. My daughter wasn't just aware of the murder plan, she'd encouraged it. "Mom's getting suspicious about the missing money," Susan had written 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, she asked why her account balance was lower than expected. "You need to handle this situation before she changes her will or calls the bank." Craig's response chilled me. "Don't worry, sis. I've got everything planned for her birthday dinner. Make sure you act surprised and devastated afterward. We need to look like grieving children, not beneficiaries." Susan's reply, "What about Brenda? She might figure out what really happened." "Brenda won't be a problem. I'll handle her separately if needed." Further digging revealed they'd been stealing from me for over a year. Susan had taken my car claiming it needed expensive repairs, then sold it and pocketed the $8,000 insurance settlement. She'd convinced me I'd agreed to let her borrow my emergency credit card, then run up $12,000 in charges for her failing marketing business. Phone records showed dozens of calls between my children and bankruptcy attorneys, estate planning lawyers, and financial advisors. They'd been researching how quickly they could liquidate my assets after my death. The final devastating blow came when I found life insurance paperwork I'd never seen before. A policy for $500,000 with Craig listed as sole beneficiary bearing my forged signature. Premium payments explained where my missing Social Security money had been going each month. I sat in stunned silence, surrounded by evidence of my children's betrayal. They hadn't just planned to kill me, they'd been systematically robbing me while pretending to love and care for me. Every Sunday dinner, every birthday card, every "How are you feeling, Mom?" had been a performance while they calculated my worth dead versus alive. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I'd ever experienced. These weren't strangers or distant relatives. They were the babies I'd nursed through fevers, the toddlers I'd taught to ride bicycles, the teenagers I'd supported through heartbreaks and failures. I'd sacrificed countless opportunities to ensure they had good educations, nice clothes, and every advantage possible. Now I faced a terrifying reality: my own children were willing to murder me for money, and they'd very nearly succeeded. If Brenda died from drinking, that poison meant for me, Craig would be guilty of murdering his own wife. The thought made me physically ill. But something else was growing alongside my grief and shocked determination. I'd spent 70 years being kind, trusting, and accommodating. Those qualities had made me vulnerable to predators who happened to share my DNA. It was time to fight back with every resource at my disposal. Frank used to say I had a steel backbone wrapped in velvet. My children had mistaken the velvet for weakness, never suspecting the steel underneath. They were about to learn that their mother was far more formidable than they'd ever imagined. The next morning brought news that Brenda was stable but still unconscious. I arrived at the hospital carrying flowers and wearing the mask of a concerned mother-in-law, but my purse contained a small digital recorder I'd bought years ago for interview research. Craig looked haggard, unshaven, playing the part of the devoted husband perfectly. He clutched Brenda's hand, speaking to her in gentle tones about getting better and coming home. To any observer, he was the picture of a loving spouse maintaining vigil over his poisoned wife. "Oh, honey, you look exhausted," I said, settling into the bedside chair. "Have you eaten anything since last night?" "I can't think about food, Mom. I just keep wondering who would do this to Brenda. She doesn't have enemies. Everyone loves her." His performance was Academy Award worthy, complete with tears and voice cracks. I activated the recorder hidden in my purse while making sympathetic noises. "The police will figure it out, sweetheart." Detective Rodriguez seemed very thorough. That's when Craig made his first mistake. "I hope they don't waste time looking at family members. Obviously, none of us would hurt Brenda. They should focus on her coworkers or maybe some crazy parent from her school." Interesting deflection, I noted silently. An innocent person would typically say they hoped police caught whoever did this, not specifically direct attention away from family. Susan arrived an hour later with coffee and pastries, immediately launching into her own performance. "This is just horrible. Who could poison sweet Brenda? Craig, you must be going out of your mind." I left the siblings together, claiming I needed to use the restroom, but actually positioning myself around the corner where I could overhear their conversation. "Did you get rid of the bottle?" Susan whispered. "Of course. It's in a dumpster behind a gas station 20 miles away. But we've got a bigger problem now. If Brenda dies, they'll do a full investigation. And if she wakes up, she might remember seeing me near her glass." "What about the backup plan we discussed?" "We stick to it. If anyone asks questions, we say Mom's been acting confused lately. Memory problems, financial mistakes, forgetting conversations. We've already started laying the groundwork with her neighbors." My blood turned to ice water. They'd been setting me up to look mentally incompetent. The attorney I consulted said we could have her declared unable to manage her own affairs if we have enough documentation. I've been keeping notes about her supposed confusion for months. This conversation was gold, but I needed more. Over the following days, I perfected my act as the befuddled elderly mother, while secretly gathering evidence. I called my longtime friend Harold Winters, a retired Phoenix police detective who'd investigated financial crimes for 30 years. "Harold, I need your help with something delicate," I said during our meeting at a coffee shop across town. Hypothetically, if someone were stealing from their elderly parent and planning to have them declared incompetent, what kind of evidence would prove it? Harold's weathered face grew serious. "That's a specific hypothetical, Dottie. You want to tell me what's really going on?" I explained everything: the poisoning attempt, the financial theft, the forged documents, the insurance policy. Harold listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes. First thing we do is document everything legally, he said finally. Hidden cameras in your home proper chain of custody for any recordings, financial forensics on your accounts. But Dottie, this is dangerous. If your children are desperate enough to attempt murder, once they'll try again. I know, that's why I need your help to do this right. Harold introduced me to Betty Morrison, an attorney specializing in elder abuse cases. Betty was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd helped dozens of seniors recover stolen assets and prosecute family members. The good news is you have excellent evidence already, Betty said after reviewing my documentation. The bad news is your children are escalating. Financial theft often progresses to physical violence when victims become aware of the crimes. Betty helped me secure my assets by opening new accounts at different banks, changing all passwords and PINs, and revoking any authorized users on my credit cards. We also discovered Craig had already submitted paperwork requesting a competency hearing scheduled for the following week. He's moving fast, Betty warned. If he succeeds in having you declared incompetent, he'll gain control of everything before you can stop him. Meanwhile, I maintained my confused elderly mother act around Craig and Susan. When Craig visited, I pretended to forget recent conversations and asked the same questions repeatedly. I left bills unpaid on my kitchen counter where he could see them making comments about how hard it was to keep track of things. "I'm worried about you, Mom," Craig said during one visit, his voice dripping with false concern. "You seem to be having trouble with your memory lately. Maybe we should look into getting you some help." "Help with what, dear? I'm managing just fine." "But you forgot our dinner plans last week, and Susan said you called her 3 times asking the same question about Dad's insurance policy." I hadn't called Susan at all, but I played along. "Did I? Oh my, I don't remember that. Everything seems so confusing lately." The harder I leaned into the confused act, the more confident my children became about their plan. They started speaking more freely around me, assuming I wouldn't understand or remember their conversations. That's how I learned about their accelerated timeline. While pretending to nap in my living room chair, I overheard Craig on the phone with Susan. "Brenda's waking up more frequently. The doctors say she might be discharged next week. We can't risk her remembering anything about the dinner." "What are you suggesting?" "The same thing we discussed before, but we need to move faster. I'll handle it during my visit on Sunday. A little something in her morning coffee, just enough to make it look like a heart attack or stroke. At her age, no one will question it." They were planning to kill me in 3 days in my own home during what I assumed would be a normal Sunday family visit. I'd run out of time for subtle evidence gathering. It was time to set my trap and spring it before they could eliminate their primary witness to attempted murder. Harold's former partner, FBI agent Patricia Wells, agreed to meet with me after reviewing the evidence we'd compiled. Agent Wells was a no-nonsense woman with silver hair and piercing blue eyes who specialized in financial crimes against the elderly. "Mrs. Peterson, what you've uncovered represents a complex criminal conspiracy involving attempted murder, elder abuse, financial fraud, and insurance fraud," she explained in her downtown Phoenix office. "The challenge is building a prosecutable case that will stand up in court." The financial evidence was solid, she continued, but proving intent to commit murder required recorded confessions or witness testimony to the conspiracy. "We need your children to incriminate themselves while you're wearing a wire. It's dangerous, but it's the best way to ensure convictions." I agreed to the plan, knowing it might be my only chance to stop them before they succeeded in killing me. Agent Wells fitted me with a sophisticated recording device designed to look like a medical alert pendant, while Harold helped me install nearly invisible cameras throughout my house. But my investigation had uncovered even more disturbing details about my children's crimes. Craig had been researching my prescription medications, learning about my blood pressure pills and arthritis medication. He'd apparently planned to make my murder look like an accidental overdose of my own medicine. Susan had been more subtle, but equally calculating. She'd been telling my neighbors that I was showing signs of dementia, setting up their cover story for after my death. Mrs. Henderson next door mentioned that Susan had expressed concern about my increasing confusion and dangerous forgetfulness. Your daughter said you'd left the stove on several times and gotten lost driving to the grocery store, Mrs. Henderson reported. She seemed so worried about your safety. None of that had happened, of course. I'd never left appliances on or gotten lost in my own neighborhood. Susan was methodically destroying my reputation to support their narrative of an elderly woman declining into dangerous incompetence. The most heartbreaking discovery was that Marcus, Susan's husband, appeared to be completely unaware of his wife's criminal activities. During my granddaughter Ashley's birthday party the previous month, Marcus had pulled me aside to express concern about Susan's behavior. She's been secretive lately, taking calls and private spending money we don't have, he'd confided. I found credit card statements for charges she can't explain. I'm starting to wonder if she's having an affair. I realized that Marcus's suspicions about an affair had led him to start monitoring Susan's communications. He might have evidence that could help my case if I could approach him carefully. Ashley, my precious granddaughter, was also completely innocent of her parents' crimes. During her recent visits, she'd mentioned being confused by her mother's comments about my health. Mom keeps saying you're having memory problems, but you seem fine to me, Ashley had said. You remember everything about my school projects and my friends' names. Mom must be mixing you up with someone else. The fact that my granddaughter could see through her mother's lies, while adults in my community believed them, highlighted how carefully Susan had crafted her deception. My investigation also revealed that Craig had been researching the layout of my house, noting which rooms had windows facing neighbors and which areas offered privacy. He'd even measured the distance from my kitchen to the nearest neighbor's house, apparently calculating whether anyone might hear signs of a struggle. Most chilling of all, I discovered that Craig had bribed Jerry, a night shift orderly at the hospital, to prevent Brenda from speaking clearly to police investigators. Jerry had been giving Brenda unnecessary sedatives during visiting hours, keeping her drowsy and confused when Detective Rodriguez tried to interview her. We need to protect Brenda while building the case against your children, Agent Wells explained. If she recovers her memory and can testify about what she saw at the restaurant, it strengthens our murder case significantly. The pieces of their conspiracy were falling into place, but time was running out. Craig had confirmed his Sunday visit, and I knew he planned to poison my coffee that morning. I had 48 hours to gather the final evidence and coordinate with law enforcement to catch him in the act. Agent Wells arranged for backup units to be stationed near my house on Sunday morning, out of sight, but ready to respond immediately. Harold would monitor the audio feed from across the street, and Detective Rodriguez would coordinate with the medical examiner's office in case Craig's poisoning attempt succeeded. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Agent Wells asked during our final planning meeting. We could arrest them now on the financial charges, but the attempted murder case might not stick without recorded confessions. I thought about Frank, about the life we'd built together, about the trust I'd placed in my children. They'd betrayed everything I'd taught them about honor, integrity, and family loyalty. If I didn't stop them now, they might target other elderly victims in the future. I'm sure, I told Agent Wells, it's time to find out what my children are really made of. As Sunday morning approached, I felt a strange sense of calm. I'd spent my entire life avoiding confrontation, trusting others to do the right thing, believing that love and kindness would be reciprocated. Those naive beliefs had nearly gotten me killed. Now I understood that sometimes love means setting boundaries, that kindness without strength is weakness, and that trust must be earned rather than freely given. My children had revealed their true nature, and I was finally ready to reveal mine. The little girl who'd grown up during the Great Depression, who'd worked her way through college, who'd raised 2 children while supporting her husband's career, who'd survived cancer scares and financial hardships, was still there inside the 70-year-old grandmother. That girl had always been a fighter. She'd just been sleeping for a while. It was time for her to wake up. Sunday morning dawned clear and cool, perfect Arizona weather that seemed to mock the darkness of what was about to unfold. I'd spent the night rehearsing my performance, the confused elderly mother who wouldn't recognize danger until it was too late. But beneath my fragile exterior, every sense was heightened, every nerve ready. Craig arrived at precisely 9 o'clock carrying fresh bagels and his usual Sunday smile. Agent Wells' recording device hung around my neck, disguised as a medical alert pendant, while hidden cameras captured everything from multiple angles. "Morning, Mom, beautiful day, isn't it?" Craig's cheerfulness seemed genuine to anyone who didn't know about the poison he'd likely hidden in his jacket pocket. "Oh, hello, sweetheart. Is today Sunday already? Time just seems to fly by anymore." I shuffled toward the kitchen in my slippers and robe, playing the part perfectly. "It sure is. I thought I'd make us some coffee and we could sit on the patio. You always loved Sunday mornings on the patio with Dad." Craig busied himself in my kitchen while I pretended to struggle with remembering where I kept the sugar. He moved with practiced efficiency, obviously familiar with my coffee routine from previous visits. I watched peripherally as he positioned himself between me and the coffee maker, his back turned for just a moment too long. "You know, Mom, I've been thinking we should talk about getting you some help around the house. Someone to assist with cooking and cleaning, maybe help you keep track of your medications." "I don't need help, Craig. I'm managing just fine on my own." "But you're forgetting things more often. Last week, you couldn't remember our phone conversation about Thanksgiving plans." We'd never had such a conversation, but I played along. "Did we talk about Thanksgiving? Oh dear, I must have forgotten. Everything seems so jumbled lately." Craig's confidence grew as I appeared more confused. He handed me a steaming mug, keeping the matching one for himself. "Here's your coffee, Mom. Extra cream, just how you like it." The moment of truth had arrived. I accepted the mug with trembling hands, noting how Craig watched my every movement. The liquid looked normal, smelled like regular coffee, but I knew it contained something that would kill me within minutes. "Craig, before I drink this, I need to tell you something important about your father's insurance policy and some changes I've been considering." His entire demeanor shifted slightly, though he tried to hide it. "What kind of changes, Mom?" "Well, I've been thinking about donating most of my money to charity when I pass. The church has such wonderful programs for helping people, and I don't really need to leave a huge inheritance. You and Susan are both doing well financially." Craig's knuckles whitened around his coffee mug. "Mom, that's a big decision. Maybe you should discuss it with us before making any major changes. Sometimes, when people get older, they make financial decisions they later regret." "Oh, I've already met with my attorney, Betty Morrison, downtown. Such a nice lady. I'm changing my will next week to leave everything to the animal shelter and the library foundation." This was complete fabrication designed to trigger panic. Craig's facade cracked slightly as he processed the implications. If I donated my money to charity, their murder plot would net them nothing. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly. This is exactly the kind of confusion I've been worried about. Let's drink our coffee and talk about this rationally." I lifted the mug toward my lips, then hesitated. "You know what? I'm suddenly not in the mood for coffee. My stomach's been a bit upset lately. Would you mind if we had tea instead?" Craig's desperation became visible. "The coffee's already made, Mom. It would be a shame to waste it. Just try a few sips." "Actually, your coffee looks better than mine, the cream distributed more evenly. Could we switch?" The panic in Craig's eyes was unmistakable now. "No, that's okay. You stick with yours. I made it specifically how you like it." "I insist." Before he could react, I reached across and switched our mugs. Craig's face went white as he stared at the coffee he'd poisoned now sitting in front of him. That's when I dropped the act entirely. "Interesting predicament, isn't it, son? You can either drink the coffee you prepared for me or explain why you're so determined that I drink from a specific mug." Craig's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The confident predator had become a trapped animal in seconds. "I know about everything, Craig. The forged signatures, the stolen money, the life insurance policy, the gambling debts to Tony Marcetti. I know you poisoned Brenda's wine at Romano's because you thought it was mine. I know you've been planning to kill me this morning and make it look like a heart attack." "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. You're confused again." "The FBI disagrees with your assessment of my mental state. Agent Wells has been monitoring this conversation, and Detective Rodriguez is reviewing all the evidence I've gathered about your crimes." Craig lunged for the door, but I'd anticipated this. "The house is surrounded, sweetheart. Harold's across the street with binoculars, and there are federal agents positioned at both ends of the block. The coffee mug slipped from Craig's shaking hands, shattering on my kitchen floor. Brown liquid spread across the tiles, carrying with it the poison he'd intended for me. "Why," I asked quietly, "help me understand how the little boy I raised to believe in right and wrong became someone who could murder his own mother." Craig collapsed into a chair, all pretense gone. The gambling debt's Mom. They were going to kill me. $300,000 plus interest. I never meant for it to go this far. "So you decided to go farther. You decided that stealing my life savings wasn't enough. You needed to steal my life itself." "It wasn't supposed to be like this. The plan was to make it look like you died peacefully in your sleep. No pain, no suffering, just gone. And then all the financial pressure would be over." "What about Susan? How deep is she involved in this conspiracy to murder me?" Before Craig could answer, my front door burst open. Susan rushed in, followed by Agent Wells and 2 other FBI agents in tactical gear. "Craig, what's taking so long? You were supposed to text me when it was finished." Susan stopped short when she saw the federal agents. "What's going on here?" "Your brother was just explaining how he planned to poison me this morning," I said calmly. "Would you like to add anything to his confession?" Susan's face cycled through confusion, denial, and finally desperate calculation. "I don't know what he's talking about. I came over to check on you because Craig said you weren't answering your phone." "Susan Patricia Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, and financial fraud." Agent Wells announced, producing handcuffs. "This is insane. I never tried to hurt my mother." Agent Wells activated a small recording device. Quote, "Mom's getting suspicious about the missing money. You need to handle this before she changes her will." End quote. That's your voice from an email sent to your brother 3 weeks ago. As both my children were handcuffed and read their rights, Marcus arrived with Ashley. They'd been at the mall completely unaware of the morning's events. Marcus's face showed complete shock as he took in the scene. Federal agents, his wife in handcuffs, Craig babbling about gambling debts and poison. "Grandma, what's happening?" Ashley asked, her voice small and frightened. I put my arms around my granddaughter, feeling her shake as the reality sank in. "I'm safe now, sweetheart. That's what matters." Marcus approached me slowly, as if afraid I might disappear. "Dottie, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Susan was capable of anything like this. I've been recording her suspicious phone calls for weeks because I thought she was cheating on me. If any of those recordings can help..." "They absolutely can help," Agent Wells confirmed. "Mr. Morrison, we'll need you to provide any evidence you've collected about your wife's activities." As my children were led away to separate police cars, Craig turned back one final time. "Mom, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to be like this." "I'm sorry too, Craig. Sorry that I failed to teach you the difference between want and need, between temporary problems and permanent solutions. Most of all, I'm sorry that you chose money over love." The door closed behind them, leaving me alone with Marcus, Ashley, and the FBI agents. After 70 years of life, I'd learned that family isn't defined by blood alone, but by loyalty, respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Looking at Marcus and Ashley, I realized I still had family worth protecting and loving. The betrayal of my biological children was devastating, but it wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter written by choice rather than obligation. The legal proceedings that followed were both exhausting and cathartic. Craig and Susan's arrests made headlines throughout Phoenix. Elderly mother outsmarts children's murder plot, and librarian fights back against family fraud ring. The attention was uncomfortable, but it served an important purpose by encouraging other elderly victims to come forward with similar stories. Craig's trial began first 6 months after his arrest. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The restaurant security footage, showing him tampering with the wine bottle, recorded confessions from my kitchen financial records, proving systematic theft, forged documents bearing my signature and the life insurance policy he'd fraudulently obtained. Dr. Martinez testified about antifreeze poisoning, explaining that the amount Craig used would have killed me within 30 minutes. Angela, the brave waitress who'd saved my life, described what she'd witnessed at Romano's. Her testimony was particularly powerful because she had no connection to our family and no motive to lie. Brenda, fully recovered from her poisoning, provided devastating testimony about her memory of that night. I remember seeing Craig near my glass right before dinner was served, she told the jury. At the time, I thought he was just adjusting the table setting. I never imagined my own husband had just poisoned my drink thinking it was his mother's. The prosecution painted a clear picture of a desperate man who'd chosen murder over honesty about his gambling addiction. Craig's defense attorney tried to argue temporary insanity due to threats from loan sharks, but the evidence of long-term planning undermined that claim. When I testified, I spoke directly to the jury about the betrayal I'd experienced. I trusted my son with access to my home, my finances, and my heart. He exploited that trust to steal my money and ultimately attempt to steal my life. The planning and calculation involved in his crimes show this wasn't a moment of desperation, but a calculated decision to value money over family. Craig received 15 years in federal prison for attempted murder, conspiracy, elder abuse, and financial fraud. His sentencing hearing was particularly difficult because he finally showed genuine remorse. I destroyed everything good in my life because I was too proud to admit I had a problem, he said through tears. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to understand how I became someone capable of hurting the person who loved me most. Susan's case was more complex because she hadn't directly administered poison, but her role in the conspiracy was clear. Her attorney negotiated a plea deal, 8 years in prison, in exchange for full cooperation with authorities and restitution for stolen funds. During her sentencing, Susan maintained that she'd never intended for anyone to die, claiming she thought Craig was only planning to make me sick enough to appear incompetent. The judge wasn't sympathetic to this distinction. Mrs. Morrison, you participated in a conspiracy that resulted in your sister-in-law nearly dying from poison intended for your mother. Your emails encouraged and facilitated this attempted murder. The fact that you didn't personally handle the poison doesn't diminish your culpability. The financial recovery process was surprisingly straightforward thanks to Betty Morrison's expertise. Civil court ordered full restitution plus damages totaling nearly $400,000 when interest and penalties were included. The fraudulent life insurance policy was voided, and Craig was required to pay back all premiums that had been automatically deducted from my accounts. Brenda filed for divorce immediately after Craig's conviction, citing attempted murder as grounds. She moved back to her hometown in Colorado, seeking a fresh start away from the trauma of that night. Before leaving, she visited me to express her gratitude. "You saved my life by switching those glasses," she said. "If you hadn't acted on that waitress's warning, I'd be dead, and Craig would have inherited everything he stole from you. I'll never forget that." The broader impact of the case extended beyond our family. Local news coverage led to increased awareness of elder financial abuse, and several other families contacted authorities about suspicious activities by their adult children. The Phoenix Police Department developed new protocols for investigating financial crimes against seniors, and area banks implemented additional safeguards for elderly customers. Angela, the restaurant server whose quick thinking had prevented my murder, received recognition from Crime Stoppers and a $5,000 reward I'd arranged through my attorney. She used the money to enroll in nursing school, saying our experience had inspired her to pursue a career helping vulnerable people. During the trials, I learned disturbing details about how close Craig had come to succeeding with his plan. If Brenda died from the poisoning, he'd arranged for Dr. Patterson, a corrupt physician who owed gambling debts to the same organization, to sign falsified paperwork, declaring me mentally incompetent due to stress and confusion following my daughter-in-law's death. Most chilling of all, I discovered that Susan would have been Craig's next victim. Emails on his laptop revealed plans to eliminate his sister after gaining control of my estate, ensuring he wouldn't have to share the inheritance. Susan's cooperation with the murder plot had bought her temporary safety, but Craig had already researched methods for making her death appear accidental. She never realized she was signing her own death warrant, Detective Rodriguez told me after reviewing all the evidence. Your son had planned to eliminate every family member who might challenge his control of your assets. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed that Craig showed signs of antisocial personality disorder and pathological gambling addiction. The therapist noted his ability to compartmentalize his crimes, maintaining loving relationships with family members while simultaneously planning to murder them for financial gain. Marcus, meanwhile, became an unlikely ally in the legal proceedings. His recordings of Susan's suspicious phone conversations provided crucial evidence about the timeline of their conspiracy. He testified reluctantly but honestly about his wife's secretive behavior and unexplained financial activities. I thought I was dealing with marital infidelity, Marcus told the court. I never imagined my wife was planning to murder her own mother. If I'd understood what those conversations were really about, I would have contacted police immediately. Ashley struggled with the knowledge that both her parents were criminals, but she found strength in maintaining her relationship with me. We attended family therapy together, working through the complex emotions of loving people who'd committed terrible crimes. I keep thinking I should have seen warning signs, Ashley confided during one of our sessions. But Mom and Uncle Craig seem so normal. How do you recognize evil in people you love? The therapist helped us understand that master manipulators often maintain different personas for different audiences. The children who'd planned my murder were also capable of genuine affection for Ashley, creating cognitive dissonance that would take years to fully process. As the legal proceedings concluded, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, my stolen money had been recovered, and the threat to my life had been eliminated. But the cost was the loss of my children and the shattering of my faith in unconditional family love. The greatest victory, however, was discovering my own strength and resilience. At 70 years old, I'd outmaneuvered two desperate criminals, gathered evidence that led to their conviction, and protected other potential victims from similar crimes. Frank would have been proud of the woman I'd become in the crucible of betrayal and danger. The trusting, accommodating wife and mother had evolved into someone who could fight back when necessary, who could make hard choices to protect herself and others. That transformation would serve me well in the next phase of my life. 2 years after that terrible birthday dinner at Romano's, I sit on the patio of my new home in a secure senior community called Desert Sunrise, watching the Arizona sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. The house is smaller than my old place on Maple Street, but it feels infinitely safer and more peaceful. The decision to move wasn't made from fear, but from practicality. After the trials and media attention, my old neighborhood held too many painful memories. Here at Desert Sunrise, I found a community of active seniors who appreciate both independence and mutual support. My days are busier now than they were in traditional retirement. 3 mornings a week, I volunteer at the Maricopa County Elder Abuse Prevention Center, helping other seniors navigate financial crimes and family manipulation. The center was established partly due to publicity from my case, and I take pride in knowing my experience led to resources that have already helped hundreds of families. Dottie, you have a natural gift for this work, says Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the center's director. Survivors trust you because you've walked in their shoes. You understand the shame and betrayal they're feeling. The work is emotionally challenging, but deeply rewarding. Last month, I helped Margaret, an 82-year-old widow, discover that her nephew had been slowly draining her bank accounts while serving as her financial power of attorney. The pattern was heartbreakingly familiar: the trusted family member, the gradual theft, the gaslighting about mental competency. I felt so stupid for trusting him, Margaret confided during one of our sessions. How could I not notice $10,000 going missing? Because you trusted someone you loved, I replied. That's not stupidity, that's human nature. The shame belongs to the person who betrayed that trust, not to you for offering it. My advocacy work has taken me across the country, speaking at conferences about elder abuse prevention and family financial crimes. The speeches are difficult because they require me to relive painful memories, but they serve an important purpose. If my story prevents even one family from experiencing what mine did, the discomfort is worthwhile. The book I wrote about my experience, titled The Steel Behind the Velvet: A Mother's Fight Against Family Betrayal, became a bestseller in the true crime genre. All proceeds go to elder abuse prevention organizations, ensuring that something positive emerges from the worst experience of my life. Perhaps most importantly, I've learned to build chosen family relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care. Marcus continues to be like a son to me, and our bond has grown stronger through shared trauma and recovery. He's remarried now to a wonderful woman named Patricia, who treats Ashley like her own daughter. Ashley, now 18 and attending Arizona State University, as she'd always dreamed, stops by every Sunday for dinner. She's studying social work with a focus on family advocacy, inspired by our experience to help other families navigate crisis and trauma. "Grandma, do you think Mom and Uncle Craig can ever really change?" Ashley asked recently. "I mean, if they get counseling in prison and work on their problems." "It's a question I've wrestled with extensively. I hope they can find peace and understanding about their choices," I told her honestly. "But change has to come from within. I can't fix them, and neither can you. We can only control how we respond to what they did." Both my children have written letters from prison expressing remorse and asking for forgiveness. Susan's letters focus on her regret and her desire to rebuild our relationship when she's released. Craig's are more introspective, analyzing how his gambling addiction led to increasingly desperate choices. I've responded to both, expressing my love for them as human beings, while maintaining clear boundaries about future contact. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, and love doesn't mean accepting abuse or manipulation. "I forgive you because carrying anger hurts me more than it hurts you," I wrote to Craig. "But trust is earned through consistent action over time, not through words of regret. If you're serious about change, prove it through how you live your life after release, not through letters asking me to forget what happened." Brenda has become an unexpected friend despite the geographical distance. We exchange letters monthly, and she visits Phoenix twice a year. Her recovery from both the physical poisoning and emotional trauma has been inspiring to watch. "I never thought I'd be grateful for being poisoned," she said during her last visit. "But it revealed Craig's true character before I wasted more years in that marriage. You saved my life in more ways than one." Harold and I have developed a close companionship that fills some of the loneliness left by Frank's death and my children's betrayal. We travel together, enjoy theater and concerts, and share the comfortable friendship of people who've both experienced significant loss. Neither of us is looking for intense romance at this stage of life, but we provide each other with reliable companionship and emotional support. "You've changed dramatically since that night at Romano's," Harold observed recently. "You're stronger, more confident, less willing to accept treatment that doesn't meet your standards." He's right. The experience of fighting for my life forced me to recognize my own worth and capabilities. I'd spent decades accommodating others, avoiding conflict, trusting without verification. Those weren't necessarily bad qualities, but they became dangerous when applied universally without discernment. Now I trust carefully and conditionally. I maintain loving relationships while setting clear boundaries about acceptable behavior. I offer help generously, but refuse to enable destructive patterns. Most importantly, I've learned that real love sometimes requires difficult conversations and uncomfortable limits. The financial recovery has provided security I'd never expected to need at this stage of life. Between the restitution from Craig and Susan's crimes and the success of my book, I'm more financially secure now than I was before the theft. I use this security to support causes I believe in and to ensure my independence as I age. The legal victory was important, but the personal transformation has been more valuable. I discovered reservoirs of strength, intelligence, and resilience I didn't know I possessed. The grandmother who'd been content to bake cookies and attend school plays revealed herself capable of complex financial investigation, strategic planning, and high-stakes confrontation when circumstances required it. Angela, the waitress who saved my life, graduated from nursing school last month. I attended her graduation ceremony, and she introduced me to her family as the woman who taught me that speaking up when something feels wrong can literally save lives. During the ceremony, I thought about the ripple effects of that terrible night. Angela found her calling in healthcare. Marcus learned to trust his instincts about family dysfunction. Ashley discovered her passion for social justice. Dozens of families received help through the Elder Abuse Center. New laws were passed to protect seniors from financial exploitation. Evil had been intended, but good emerged from the ashes of betrayal. As I finish writing this account on my patio, watching the desert stars emerge in the darkening sky, I'm struck by the complexity of human nature. My children weren't monsters. They were flawed people who made increasingly terrible choices when faced with pressure and temptation. Understanding this doesn't excuse their actions, but it helps me maintain some compassion for the children they once were. The most important lesson I've learned is that self-worth cannot be dependent on other people's treatment of us. My value as a human being wasn't diminished by my children's betrayal, just as it hadn't been enhanced by their previous affection. Learning to recognize my inherent worth, independent of external validation, has been the most liberating aspect of this entire ordeal. To anyone facing family manipulation, financial abuse, or threats to their safety, I want you to know that you're stronger than you realize. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Document suspicious behavior. Seek help from professionals who understand these dynamics. Most importantly, remember that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, especially by people who claim to love you. Family relationships should enhance your life, not endanger it. When blood relatives become threats to your well-being, it's not only acceptable, but necessary to protect yourself by any legal means available. You don't owe anyone access to your life, your money, or your trust, simply because you share DNA. The steel behind the velvet isn't about becoming hard or cynical. It's about maintaining strength and boundaries while preserving your capacity for love and generosity. It's about choosing wisdom over naivety, discernment over blind trust, and self-protection over people-pleasing. If you're an older adult feeling isolated or vulnerable, please know that there are people and organizations ready to help. Reach out to your local area agency on Aging Contact, the National Center on Elder Abuse, or call the Elder Care Locator. You don't have to face family manipulation or financial abuse alone. And if you're a family member of an elderly relative, please examine your motivations honestly. Are you genuinely concerned about their well-being, or are you focused on their assets? Are you respecting their autonomy and dignity, or are you infantilizing them to justify taking control? Real love seeks the other person's best interests, not your own convenience or financial benefit. Now, as I prepare for another birthday celebration next month at Romano's Italian restaurant, I'll be surrounded by people who've earned the right to share that special evening. Marcus, Patricia, Ashley, Harold, Brenda, Angela, and several friends from Desert Sunrise. We'll raise our glasses in a toast to survival, to justice, to the family we choose, rather than the family we're born into. This time, I'll drink every drop of my Chianti with confidence, knowing that the people at my table wish me well rather than harm. And if anyone approaches our table with suspicious intentions, they'll discover that this 72-year-old grandmother is no longer the easy target she once appeared to be. The girl who survived the Great Depression, worked her way through college, and raised 2 children is still here inside me. She's just older, wiser, and infinitely more cautious about whom she allows close enough to hurt her. But she's also more grateful for genuine love, more appreciative of true loyalty, and more determined to spend her remaining years surrounded by people who see her as a treasure to be protected rather than a resource to be exploited. That's the real victory in this story, not just surviving betrayal, but learning to thrive in its aftermath. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-protection? Have you recognized warning signs of manipulation in your own relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Remember to like this story if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more true stories of survival and resilience, and share this with anyone who might benefit from learning that it's never too late to fight back against those who would harm us. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember, you're stronger than you know, braver than you feel, and more valuable than anyone who would betray your trust could ever understand. Stay safe, stay strong, and never forget that you deserve to be treated with love and respect. Until next time, this is Dottie reminding you that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone else's destructive choices. Take care of yourselves and each other.